He is.
Hello.
He tried to be all like dark and punk or whatever he was doing.
All right, while we're talking, I'm going to pass these around. The MFAs, you definitely want to look at this, but everybody will enjoy it. It's may inspire you for your last thing. Tolkien put together, for many years, he wrote Father Christmas letters to his kid. And you'll see it. He illustrated the letters. I'll pass it around. He made up stories about Father Christmas and the Man in the Moon. Anyway, I'll pass this all. It's all. And then this is a wonderful book I have. This is all of the art and illustration that Tolkien himself did. Right? And he illustrated the original Hobbit that came out had his illustrations, but he did others. So I'll pass these around. You might enjoy seeing these, and like I said, maybe it'll inspire your last thing. They're really good. So, all right. Man, are we ready to go? Well, good. Margie, I went 5 semesters in a row. I must have done something good. You see? I watched the Audrey Hepburn. It was pretty good. What's that? Well, oh man, that's great. That's like when you say you have a child. You're my favorite child. I'm your only child, Dad. You know that kind of stuff. But I did watch the Audrey Hepburn. It was kind of sad. The Audrey Hepburn documentary. It was good, but it was kind of sad. Did she really have to leave Mel Ferrer? I don't know. It didn't sound like he was that bad, but I don't know. I guess lucky with love, because then the other guy was. How can you be married to Audrey Hepburn and be having affairs? I mean, that's really ridiculous, isn't it? That's ridiculous.
Every top 6 on there.
But you really reminded me. The one lady that kept speaking had a French accent, I think, and she had written a biography of Audrey Hepburn. That one reminded me of you. I didn't recognize her before, but she was really neat. I think it was a French accent. Anyway, she had a kind of cool accent, but it was good. But it's kind of sad. You know what movie? Have you ever seen the movie Lily? It's Mel Ferrer, but it's really Leslie Caron is the name, and that's really good if you get a chance to see it. Mel Ferrer is a puppeteer, and he's lame, and then the puppets bring over Lily, and then she kind of falls in love with the puppets, but then she's falling in love with him, and it's really good if you get a chance to see it. Lily. All right, are we ready to go? Good stuff. Let's finish up book 4, and let us turn to page 689. Let's pick up right here. A few important stuff here. Oh, so much to do. We'll make it though. Again, 2 weeks from today will be the essays are due for the MLAs, and then 3 weeks from today will be the final third oral report. Right? So we have in 3 weeks from today. Yeah, that's the. And so we have 3 full classes to finish up the Lord of the Rings, and we'll do the best we can. Good thing. Good. I'm still thinking that through, yeah, because I think that might be a good idea. So let's see how things go, because it's online, so it's easy to do. You know, in fact, what I'll probably do, if you're ready for it, is just have you do it the same time they're doing their art, like last time. You'll still have a full week to study. Yeah. Yeah, they have to be in early anyway, so maybe we'll kind of plan, and I'll be emailing you, but plan tentatively to do it 3 weeks from today, just like you did before. And it's the same thing, 4 essays. You'll be done in an hour or something. That's good thinking. Got to think ahead. Plan it with your other. You were done already. Yeah, I'm impressed. Robert said he's done already too, right? You guys are in a roll. I like it. How are you coming, Amanda? You still thinking? You got 3 weeks. Guess it went well. And I said, hopefully, maybe when we take a break and at the end, if you want to show the MLA some of your artwork out there, it's cool stuff. All right, let's dive into page 689. And just, again, Faramir is so much like Gandalf, right? And we'll find out later one of the reasons that Denethor is so mean to Faramir is he considers him a wizard's pupil. You listen to Gandalf more than you listen to me. And of course, I would listen to Gandalf more than I would listen to that crazy Denethor anyway. Here's a place when they've captured Gollum, right? And Gollum says, top of the page, loose us, the cord hurts us, right? And we've done nothing. And Faramir says, nothing? He says, looking at the wretched creature with a keen glance, but without any expression in his face either of anger or pity or wonder. Nothing? Have you never done anything worthy of binding or of worse punishment? However, that is not for me to judge happily. Kind of thing you might imagine Gandalf saying, right? Anybody recognize the phrase, treat a man as he deserves and who will escape a whipping? Is it? From Shakespeare. Treat a man as he deserves and who will escape a whipping. That's actually from Hamlet. We read Hamlet. Okay, so again, we're like I said, the one thing that the movie's missing is it doesn't quite get the fullness of Faramir's nobility. So you want to see how noble he is. Then on the bottom of page 689, here's a passage I alluded to. Remember when Treebeard was talking about Saruman, and he talked about him as, having closed doors in his mind? Well, here's where Faramir says something very similar about Gollum. Bottom of the page. There are locked doors and closed windows in your mind, and dark rooms behind them. But in this I judge that you speak the truth. Okay, so again, just like Saruman, Gollum, this is part of the nature of evil, right? When we give ourselves over to evil, it's like we imprison ourselves in our own mind. We get locked up and we can't break out. We can't escape. So that's an important one. Then on the next page 690, there's a few passages here. There's a wonderful moment here where they're trying to decide what to do with Gollum or Smeagol, and Faramir is going to allow Smeagol to go. But first, Frodo has to swear that he will, in a sense, watch over him. And there's a great moment where he swears that, and he says, towards the bottom of the page, it is of great worth, said Faramir, and now, do you take this creature, this Smeagol, under your protection? And he says, I do take Smeagol under my protection, said Frodo. And then there's a really neat thing, it's easy to miss. Sam sighed audibly, right? And we expect, oh man, why does my poor master trust this thing, right? Because Sam never really trusts him. But then only Tolkien would add the next part. It says, Sam sighed audibly, but not at the courtesies of which, as any hobbit would, he thoroughly approved. Indeed, in the Shire, such a matter would have required a great many more words and bows. Okay, now when he says, not at the courtesies, he doesn't just mean being kind and courteous. He means he approves of the ceremonial aspect of this, the way it's done. Right? In that sense, hobbits would probably like a high church or a low church. Well, when you say ceremonies, though, I mean that's kind of a weird one. They on the whole, they probably would like low church because all they want to do is eat all day. But what I meant by high church is they like ceremonial things, right? And that is something more southern or northern, more south or north. But well, ceremonies and stuff. I mean, gentility and stuff like that. You would identify that more with the Old South. That idea of curtsying and stuff like that, bowing and curtsying. Oh no! I'm talking here about. Oh, sorry. What I'm saying is that Sam, he's sighing about this. He's upset. The reason he's upset is because why is Frodo trusting him? But Tolkien wants us to understand he's not upset at the courtesies. That word is being used more as the formality. It was a formal kind of thing, right? Of which, as any hobbit would, he thoroughly approved. In the Shire, they like that kind of, very specific. And again, the closest would be bowing and curtsying or something like that. The formal, or maybe if you were in Japan, where the bowing is very, very formal. I mean, it's like super formal. How you do this and right. I mean, like in real Japan, you don't just drink tea, right? What do you have? You have a tea. High tea, or you have a tea ceremony, you heard that phrase? Where it's very, very formalized, okay? And I don't know if you know about that. Right, the specific way. Were you friends with that girl, Rachel Boston? Do you remember her? A little before you, but she and Kaylin always were very serious about their tea. And the British can be like that, too.
Culture has that's kind of woven throughout.
Good.
What they do, everything. Even like, I was watching a documentary, they were talking about woodblock carving.
Good.
And one of the artists that they followed, he was tea time, pressing, everything was
Good.
It was a certain step of certain set of steps. I don't know why I can't speak to that, but everything is ritualistic.
Good.
And it's designed to put your mind in a certain I guess standpoint.
That's true. When you're doing all this, like the cutting, everything's straight. It's an art, and And this is what we're getting at here with the hobbits, what he's saying. They like those kinds of rituals, a life that has meaning and, a round of things and whatnot. One of the things that's lost, even the Catholics that's lost, it used to be, in the old days, there were all these ceremonies throughout the year. Not just Mardi Gras followed by Lent, but all other feasts and rituals, right? And in the old Hebrew calendar, in the Old Testament, right? There were 3 times a year they were supposed to go to Jerusalem if they could. And one was Passover, and one was Pentecost, and the other was booths, right? Have you studied that? The festival dedication of booths, right? And all of those were, in a way, also linked to the seasonal cycle as well. And that's something you see in the Shire, even ritualized eating in a way, right? They love that sort of stuff. And that's something that Tolkien loved, because he was a hobbit in that sense, right? Wow.
It's one of the very historical truths of the Gospels.
Oh, good.
It's the fact that Jesus died on Passover.
Good.
And then the church was sent out on the festival of Pentecost that shows how long he was still on the earth.
Good. Because that's right. So he resurrection appearances for 40 days. And then he says to the disciples, don't leave, stay. Because just a little bit over a week later, is when you have the Pentecost and the birthday of the church, right? Yeah. And then, this is, it's kind of neat. And I think there is a deep level to that idea of a life that's lived deliberately with rituals that give life meaning and sort of purpose and order and things like that. Well, okay. The other thing is on page 691, as they're leaving each other, right? Again, Faramir is still very suspicious of Gollum, as who wouldn't be. And after the space break, he says, Frodo, I think you do very wisely in this. I do not think you should go with this creature. It is wicked. Notice, even the kindly Faramir calls him it several times, Gollum. And it's really Frodo's love and pity, the sort of redemptive pity that reaches out to help him. No, not altogether wicked, said Frodo. Not wholly, perhaps, but malice eats it like a canker. That's certainly true. And the evil is growing. He will lead you to no good. If you will part with him, I will give him safe conduct and guidance to any point on the borders of Gondor that he may name. He would not take it. He would follow after me as he long has done, and I have promised many times to take him under my protection and to go where he led. You would not ask me to break faith with him, right? That's what Frodo says. No, said Faramir, but my heart would, for it seems less evil to counsel another man to break troth than to do so oneself, right? Faramir understands. Again, I'm not going to ask you to break your faith. Frodo has taken a vow to watch over somebody, right? And Faramir says, I won't ask you to break it, though it's easier to ask someone else to break it than break it yourself. He's being very honest. But all of these things are important elements to Tolkien. All right. Well, then they move along, and the whole next chapter, chapter 7, called Journey to the Crossroads, the whole reason why we have this chapter, one of the shortest in the whole book, is because of the beautiful ending. So jump to the end of that chapter on page 702. And so they're journeying along. It's what's called Ithilien, the old garden there, and they're journeying along the western side of Mordor, on the western side of all those mountains. And they're going down so they can get over to where Osgiliath is and move on in, right? And when they come to a crossroads, these are the old, sort of east-west, north-south roads that were put there, some of them by the Númenóreans. When they come there, they find a statue of one of the old kings, one of the old Númenórean kings. And look what happens. This is so wonderful. Hey, we need to read this, especially in our troubled day and age right now, troubled it is, right? And it says, okay, page 702, I guess it's the fourth to last paragraph. Standing there for a moment, filled with dread, Frodo became aware that a light was shining. He saw it glowing on Sam's face beside him. Turning towards it, he saw beyond an arch of bows the road to Osgiliath running almost as straight as a stretched ribbon down into the west. There, far away, beyond sad Gondor, now overwhelmed in shade, the sun was sinking, finding at last the hem of the great slow rolling pall of cloud and falling in an ominous fire towards the yet unsullied sea. Is that a great landscape? Who wants to paint it? We need Paula to paint that landscape. You paint that? Okay, the brief glow fell upon a huge sitting figure, still and solemn as the great stone kings of Argonath. Does anybody remember what the Argonath was? Good, because they went down the river under the two giant statues with their hand out like that, and that was of Isildur and Anarion, the two brothers, right? A huge Argonath. And it's the same people, another Numenorean king. And look what's happened to it, though. The years had gnawed at it, and violent hands had maimed it. Its head was gone, and in its place was set in mockery a round, rough-hewn stone, rudely painted by savage hands in the likeness of a grinning face with one large red eye in the midst of its forehead. The orcs have desecrated the statue. They've put just a stone, and they've put a grinning face, and of course the eye of Sauron. Right? Trying to desecrate this thing built by the Numenoreans who had always held off Sauron. And it says, upon its knees and mighty chair, and all about the pedestal, were idle scrawls mixed with the foul symbols that the maggot folk of Mordor used. Now, we would call this today graffiti, okay? But they are vandals. They've destroyed, and just for the sake of destruction. Right? Does that make anybody mad when you see people vandalize for the sake of vandalism? What do we say in Texas? Don't mess with Texas. That's right. Don't be throwing. People throw stuff out their window and all. It's terrible. God, it is God's country, right? And this is, but they destroy. They like destroying it. They're barbaric, and they just lay waste to everything. Right? But look what happens. So, in other words, so here's the statue, and of course the head is still there, but it's falling all along its side. And then this wonderful. It's a moment of vision, really. Suddenly, caught by the level beams, Frodo saw the old king's head. He needs the stone statue. It was lying, rolled away by the roadside. Look, Sam, he cried, startled into speech. Look, the king has got a crown again. The eyes were hollow and the carven beard was broken, but about the high, stern forehead there was a coronal of silver and gold. Not the coronavirus, but corona, or the beer, okay? A corona, like a crown. A coronal of silver and gold. A trailing plant with flowers like small white stars had bound itself across the brows as if in reverence for the fallen king. And in the crevices of his stony hair, yellow stonecrop gleamed. By the way, I'm a true man and so know nothing about flowers whatsoever, but Tolkien is always very, very specific about flowers and things like that. I mean, like he knows what he's talking about when he does these things. And he says, they cannot conquer forever. And then suddenly the brief glimpse was gone. The sun dipped and vanished. And as if at the shutting of a lamp, black night fell. So one little ray of hope, right? Like almost like a little prophecy. Just nature has, and then what's happened is as the sun is going down, the sun has gleamed just right on the flowers and the little flowers around its head. And it seems for a moment the king has a crown. And then it all goes dark. But those are the visions sometimes we need to sustain us, right? Like a little prophecy in the night, a little hope in the night that we will survive, that we'll get through the MFA thesis, which is tomorrow. Almost there. Are we going to meet your? Am I going to meet your family members? Are you all going to be here? Okay, you told them they have to walk across the dirt, right, to get here. Okay, yeah. Now remember, if anybody in your family does have a handicap sticker, they can still park, along the side there. There still are a few. Now, they're like this way along it. You can still park if they have a handicap sticker, because otherwise you're going to have to walk some way. And you can drive them closer, but you'll have to go over the stones. If you have a truck. Anyway, I just hope it doesn't cut down on the numbers. And those of you that are still here, because it's 4 to 7, I'm going to be here. I brought some food, because then at 7:30, if you go over to the Dunham Theater, the big theater, Opera Workshop is doing a night of Rodgers and Hammerstein music. So it should be really nice. What's that? That's tomorrow, yeah, 7:30. This thing, the thesis is 4 to 7. And they used to always have lots of food, but because of COVID, there's no food. But there's great art to feed on, right? We can live on beauty, can we not? This is what we want. There we go. We live on creativity. But anyway, if you're still hanging out, go there. It's really going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. And that's so big. There's plenty of space there. All right, let us move forward. They go to the stairs of Kirith Ungol, right? And those are the stairs that are right next to Minas Morgul. And as they get there, right, if you've seen the movie, they see the chief, the Lord of the Nazgul, and they're riding out on their way to attack Minas Tirith, the White City. And it's at this moment that Book 4 has shot behind Book 3. Okay? And that's why the movie kind of brought it out. The movie ends just before they start to go into Mordor. This one actually takes us into Mordor, but it is overlapping. Right? We're already past Book 3, and we're in Book 5 where they actually attack. Right? So the movie, in some ways, lined it up a little more accurately. But as they go, and again, he's terrified, and as the chief of the Nazgul comes, of course, what is Frodo tempted to do? Put the ring on. It's like pushing him. And did anybody notice what stops him? He touches something in his chest. Yeah, it's the phial. It's that star glass from Galadriel. That's what gives him strength, so he won't, go through with it. It's the first time we've actually referenced the star glass since it was given to him. Right? It'll become even more important, of course, when they get to Shelob. But anyway, I can't read all of this, so we're going to move on. And already, last class, we looked at page 711 and 712, which is the great speech about the stories that really matter. Right? But it's really amazing that Tolkien did this. Two of the most important moments in the entire epic are side by side. So first there's this long speech, which is so wonderful, but then turn to the next page, to page 714, and we have an incredibly important scene, and I was proud of Amanda that you picked up on this. You mentioned it in your last thing. You'll recognize it. It's page 714, and Gollum has gone off scrounging, right? And when he comes back, he finds Frodo and Sam sleeping beside each other. Sam was supposed to be watching Frodo, but he fell asleep. And look what happens in this moment. It says, 7:14, about halfway down, Gollum looked at them. A strange expression passed over his lean, hungry face. The gleam faded from his eyes, and they went dim and gray, old and tired. A spasm of pain seemed to twist him, and he turned away, peering back up towards the pass, shaking his head as if engaged in some interior debate. There's that psychomachia again. Then he came back, and slowly putting out a trembling hand, very cautiously, he touched Frodo's knee. But almost the touch was a caress. For a fleeting moment, could one of the sleepers have seen him, they would have thought that they beheld an old, weary hobbit, shrunken by the years that had carried him far beyond his time, beyond friends and kin, and the fields and streams of youth. An old, starved, pitiable thing. It's just a moment. I like to call this a redemptive moment. There's a moment here where the quote, humanity inside of Gollum, Smeagol, is coming out. Since seeing this beautiful closeness, this love of Frodo and Sam, suddenly it causes a spasm of pain, and there's a moment of possibility. Now remember, we saw that moment for Saruman too. Remember a few weeks ago? Remember when he's on the tower there? Orthanc? Ooh, that was thunder. Oh boy, okay. Thank you, God, for emphasizing my point. And the, would it be nice if you could just get that to work every time you spoke, thunder?
It's like that. It's in the middle of a pouring rainstorm, and our door went straight to the outside. In the classroom, there's 3 of us students in there because nobody else could brave the rain. And it would just thunder periodically after somebody said something like, "We're on the right track."
We're on the right track.
Working a proof, and we're like, "Well, what about this?" Good to go.
When we were little boys, my brother and I both took some karate class. I don't know why. It seems like American kids do that. It's like playing soccer, and then we grow up. But anyway, we took the judo class or whatever, old-fashioned. I guess he was Chinese. But anyway, my brother was always the mischievous one. And anyway, he said something back sharp to the sensei. And all of a sudden, whoosh, this incredible thunder crack goes, see, you must listen to me. It was just great. Sobered my brother up for a few minutes at least. But I always remember that. That was just great stuff. Anyway, but this is just like, okay, so when Saruman was on the Orthanc, Gandalf said, come down, right? In the sense, it's not too late. And remember, just for a second, we see that gleam in his eye, and then he starts yelling and screeching and stuff like that. But here for a moment, it's almost like he's coming back. But at that touch, Frodo stirred and cried out softly in his sleep. And immediately Sam was wide awake. The first thing he saw was Gollum pawing at Master, as he thought. He really wasn't. Hey, you, he said roughly. What are you up to? Nothing, said Gollum softly. Nice, Master. I dare say. But where have you been to? Sneaking off and sneaking back, you old villain? Gollum withdrew himself, and a green glint flickered under his heavy lids. Almost spider-like he looked now, crouched back on his bent limbs with his protruding eyes. The fleeting moment had passed beyond recall. What is the fleeting moment Tolkien is referring to? What is gone? You know? Because you wrote about this, Miranda. What fleeting moment has passed? It was his chance for sort of redemption. Right? There was just that little opening, right? Because you wrote about that in your last thing. Just a little possibility. And this is important because one of the letters I was reading, Tolkien said when he would go back and read The Lord of the Rings himself, there were two parts that always brought tears to his eyes. One was the sound of the horns of Rohan and cock's crow coming to the Battle of Pelennor Fields, that we'll get to next time. The other one was this moment when just for a second, Gollum has a chance. Like redemption is there, and then Sam closes it up. Sad. Now, unfortunately, this scene is not done in the movie. You get a little touch of it, though, at the end of The Two Towers, when, Sam is making his famous speech about the stories that really matter, right? And you look at the face of Gollum, and it just seems to be, but then he goes right back. Because Master trickster, tricked me. He doesn't realize that Frodo saved his life, right? Because they would have killed him in the Forbidden Pool. But and Frodo said he'll never understand that. He won't, right? But so they captured a little bit of it. But this moment is at the very heart of the ability, just for a moment, something pierced through all these layers of sin and self-regard and narcissism and everything else that he's just so wrapped up in knots, like the sinners in Dante's Inferno. And there is just a chance, and it's closed up. Sneaking. Hobbits always so polite, yes. Oh, nice hobbits. Smeagol brings them up secret ways that nobody else could find. Tired he is, thirsty he is, yes, thirsty. And he guides them, and he searches for paths, and they say, sneak. Very nice friends. Oh, yes, my precious, very nice. Sam felt a bit remorseful, though not more trustful. I'm sorry, but you startled me out of my sleep, and I shouldn't have been sleeping, and that made me a bit sharp. Though Mr. Frodo, he's that tired. I asked him to have a wink, and, well, that's how it is. Sorry. But where have you been to? Sneaking. You see how he's closed up? Become, completely cynical, skeptical, whatnot? Oh, very well. Have it your own way. I don't suppose it's so far from the truth. And now we better all be sneaking along together. What time? It's tomorrow. Very foolish, very dangerous if poor Smeagol wasn't sneaking about. I think we shall get tired of that word soon, said Sam. Haven't you ever had a friend like that just drives you crazy? They just keep doing that stuff. You can never tell whether they're serious or facetious and stuff like that.
Yep.
Oh, wait. Are you pointing at each other? Okay. You're pointing at each other. You guys really need to do a buddy show like Falcon and Winter Soldier. It would be good. Frenemies, isn't that the phrase? Frenemies. Yeah. Who's some buddies? The odd couple, that's better. That's better, the odd couple.
It'd be like Archie Bunker and Fred and what's the guy's name?
Oh, the meathead? Mike the meathead?
Moving on up.
it was Sanford. No, not Sanford. Jefferson. Jefferson. Yeah, Jefferson. Oh man, that's too much fun. Okay, anyway, so yeah. Now, watch it. This is very important. Okay, so and then Frodo wakes up. Okay, and he says, "Hello, Smeagol. Found any food? Have you need any rest? No food, no rest, nothing for Smeagol. He's a sneak." Sam clicked his tongue. And he says something very important. Don't take names to yourself, Smeagol. It's unwise whether they are true or false. Don't do that. That distresses me when you hear people taking names to themselves, right? Don't call yourself bad names, right? Words have power. Don't ever put a curse on people, okay? Because words have power, right? And we have to be careful what we call ourselves, right? If we're always calling ourselves a loser, we're going to be a loser, okay? Don't call yourself, right? Anyway, anyway, they move on. Okay, they go on, and we get to Shelob's lair. Oh my gosh, we could spend so much time here. I remember when the second, because this part's in the third movie, right? The Shelob. And at the end of the second movie, my daughter was only 7 or something like that. And at the end of the second movie, that's when Gollum says, maybe she can take care of them. Yes, she could do it. And then I'll take the ring when they're dead. Right? And I remember saying to Stacy, who was 7, Stacy, she is a giant spider. You have 1 year to get brave of it. Because that was the only thing she was afraid of, was spiders. So she survived. And remember, anybody with arachnophobia, the third movie came out very close in time to the second Harry Potter movie that had a giant spider in it too. Or was it the second or third? Maybe it was the third. But it was second or third. And it had a bunch of giant spiders, actually. Woo! They're terrible. But if you really are afraid of spiders, then you need to watch, what's that show called? With Baby Yoda. You have to watch The Mandalorian. Oh man, the second season had a really scary scene with spiders. You haven't seen it? Oh, it's really good. It's really good. Or watch a movie called Arachnophobia, which is really good. Arachnophobia is actually scarier because there's no giant spiders. They're just poisonous spiders that can kill you. I mean, so it's actually like believable in a way. Whew. All right, so they go in there. What's that? Oh yeah. Oh my. Oh, they got those giant white ones or something. I've seen pictures of. What's it?
They like eat birds.
They eat.
No, they do.
Really?
They legitimately catch and eat birds.
It's amazing.
We got one of those little caves sitting next to the trail in Moody Gardens down there in Rainforest.
Oh, really? Oh, I forgot. Okay. Anyway, I think we're all random today. You running out of energy? We're gonna make it. We're almost there. I was the one that be dying. I had my shot yesterday. But anyway. Again, I have a second shot. Again, I was telling you, at least for me, drinking 3 gallons of water, I had a little bit of a headache last night, and I did feel that, you get hot, but I just kept drinking and drinking water. Just kept drinking and drinking, and yeah, just that gin knocked me out. I was fine. I mean, just a lot of water and orange juice and things like that, soup, but it really did help, and I seemed to be through it. What's that? But lots of liquids. Lots of liquids. Oh, gin and juice. Okay, well, what is it? What is that? What is that called? Screwdriver. What's that? Screwdriver. Orange juice and vodka, or a mimosa. That would be more southern. A mimosa. Champagne and orange juice, right? No fun. Good.
Second was put spiders in his books and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You remember it? That's right. Remember that?
When he was a kid, yeah. He almost died because
Yeah.
his family moved to Africa.
Right.
Africa, and we would call it babysitter.
Right. Her nanny, basically.
Yeah, nanny.
Yeah. Saved him.
Saved his
Good.
life, yeah.
Are you going to put a spider in your next painting?
Oh no.
Oh, okay. That's right. Yeah. He was bitten by a tarantula. He was like 3 years old. Like, so he probably didn't remember it, consciously. But yeah, one wonders if he didn't, in the back of his mind, remember it or the fear. I'm sure his, mother reminded him of it and stuff like that. Yeah, but that nanny sucked the poison out and saved him. Just in time. So it was a pretty good nanny. Must have been Mary Poppins or something like that. Anyway.
Spoonful of sugar.
Spoonful of sugar. There we go. Anyway, so See, so we'll jump in here. So at first the spider comes out and Sam remembers the star glass, let it be a light to you in dark places when all other lights have gone out, right? And he holds it up and eventually chases it off. But let's jump in because we don't have too much time here. Let's look at the description on page 723. This is where we learn a little bit more about Shelob, who this is. And remember, Shelob is not so much a spider as a spiritual being, like a Maiar in spider form. Right? Just like the Balrogs are Maiar, spiritual beings in the form of fire demons and whatnot. And if you remember, the original spider was Ungoliant, and she's an offspring, which is, it's not clear, is Shelob also a Maiar or lesser? It never quite explains it. But anyway, it's a descendant of that. It is ultimately a spiritual being in spider form. And remember we said before, it's called Kirith Ungol, as in Ungol, because it means the pass of the spider. Remember we said that seems to be why Gollum pretends not to know the name of the pass. Oh, I don't know what it is. You know. Okay, so here's the description. It's on page 723 after the space break there in the middle. There, age long, she had dwelt, an evil thing in spider form. I'm sorry, I just had an image of Nancy Pelosi. Sorry, okay. I'm allowed one political joke. One political joke, okay, that's it. I just had that image suddenly. Okay. There, age long, she had dwelt, an evil thing in spider form, even such as once of old had lived in the land of the elves in the west that is now under the sea. Such as Beren fought in the mountains of terror in Doriath, and so came to Luthien upon the green sward amid the hemlocks and the moonlight long ago. That's wonderful. Again, that layering and layering and layering. What he's talking about is, if you remember, Beren lost his father, was killed fighting the orcs and fighting the people up in Fangoradrim, right up there. And to get from Angband, Fangoradrim, down to Doriath, you have to go through the mountains of terror, Ered Golgoroth. And that's where Ungoliant had gone after she, destroyed everything. And then all of her children were bred in those mountains. And that's the mountains of terror that Beren had to get through to get to Doriath. And then somehow he found his way through the Girdle of Melian and found the lovely Luthien singing and dancing on the grass. Right? Beautiful stuff. Make sure you see Tolkien before it's too late. If you have HBO Max, I think they still have Tolkien unless they get rid of it, because it doesn't stay forever. But it really is a good movie if you get to see it. Okay. How Shelob came there, flying from ruin, no tale tells. Can you guess what ruin she would have had to flee from? Okay, because the Ungoliant and her original breed were living in Beleriand. And what happened to Beleriand? Yeah, it's like, remember the wave covered it. So when the great wave that destroyed Numenor, as it was coming over Beleriand, somehow, at least Shelob, maybe she's the only one, but at least Shelob escaped and came. Right? It certainly seems that some of the Nephilim survived the Noah flood, right? Because Goliath seems almost the last of the Nephilim or something like that. Some of them seem to have survived. But anyway, how Shelob came there, flying from ruin, no tale tells, for out of the dark years few tales have come. But still she was there, who was there before Sauron, and before the first stone of Barad-dûr. That's the Dark Tower. And she served none but herself, drinking the blood of elves and men, bloated and grown fat with endless brooding on her feasts, weaving webs of shadow, for all living things were her food, and her vomit darkness. Clinton, you're not allowed to make any comments about your former wife. Okay, just... Anyway, so, again... only Tolkien understands the nature of, and what I love it is that in Sauron you get maybe the extreme of masculine evil or something, and maybe you get the extreme of feminine evil or something, but it's like turned in on itself, right? In a way, Shelob is not really seeking power in the way Sauron is seeking power. She is just seeking to devour. Again, think of the most evil, what do they call that? Like the most grasping mother that like just devours her children. You've ever heard the phrase smother love? Like a mother that like never allows her children to really leave her. right? Holds them. I mean, this is what, just take that to the most evil extent imaginable, right? Just like Hitler would be like to take the desire to rule and order and just take it to its extreme, right? And over here, let's take that to its extreme. He's getting at the nature of an evil that is utterly narcissistic, utterly turned in on itself, and it gets no pleasure out of anything, right? Just a wholly repellent character, but this is good. Evil, and like I said, whatever J.K. Rowling believes, her books are based on a very Judeo-Christian understanding of good and evil, right? Voldemort is a perversion. Was Tom Riddle, wasn't that his name? Was it Tom Riddle, his original name? He wasn't evil, right? But he gave way to the dark side. And, the image of him like half made up and stuff, just perfect. It's very Tolkien, but it's because it's very Augustinian. Really understands the nature of evil. Anyway, far and wide her lesser broods, bastards of the miserable mates, her own offspring, that she slew, spread from glen to glen, from the Ephel-Duath to the eastern hills to Dol Guldur. That's where Sauron was for a while. She's like moving through the woods. And the fastnesses of Mirkwood, but none could rival her. Shelob the Great, last child of Ungoliant to trouble the unhappy world. Does anybody have phrases like this but Tolkien? I mean, that's just great, okay? This is another one, Clint, you have to memorize and come up with a use for.
Oh, no.
Have you come up with a use yet for, I did not pass through fire and water to bandy words with a serving man until the lightning falls, whatever. You still need to use that phrase.
My line is
Oh.
potato.
Incredible. Incredible. Already years before, Gollum had beheld her. So Gollum has been there before, because that's how he got in now. Gollum beheld her, Smeagol, who pried into all dark holes. Remember, this is the one who seeks after forbidden knowledge. Right? By the way, I sent out to you, if you're interested, there's a free writers conference by Zoom. You just signed up. And I'm going to actually give a talk. I always do that for Dr. Bolson. I said I'll give a talk, and I'm going to be talking about the Byronic hero, that character that sacrifices all for forbidden knowledge. You remember that? That was my last lecture for the others. Anyway, I'll talk about that. Okay, so, and in past days he had bowed and worshipped her, right? Worshipped her evil, sort of. And the darkness of her evil will walk through all the ways of his weariness beside him, cutting him off from light and from regret. Wow. So not only has he lost the desire for light, he can't even feel remorse for the evil of the past. Has stranded him in very much an inferno. And again, the closest person to Tolkien in really understanding the repellent nature of evil is actually Dante. Is the only other one. And we told you that's the weakness of Milton. He still does make Satan a little bit too charismatic. Nobody's going to be fooled by Shelob, right? And there's other reasons why he does it, but nobody's going to be fooled by this character, right? Was that? It is straight up. I mean, basically, what we talked about, what happens in Milton is that his Satan is so charismatic that we keep getting fooled by him. In other words, we get sucked in, and then we suddenly, oh my gosh, I'm sympathizing with the devil. So he is doing something else, right? But here, to get at that nature of evil, right? It's powerful. And he had promised to bring her food, but her lust was not his lust. Little she knew or cared for towers or rings or anything devised by mind or hand, who only desired death for all others, mind and body, and for herself a glut of life, alone, swollen till the mountains could no longer hold her up, and the darkness could not contain her. Be afraid. This is the true nature of evil. If you remember, Ungoliant she wanted the Silmarillions not like to get power. She was going to swallow them. She just swallowed everything and she sucked out the light of the two trees. Right? It's just destruction for the sake of destruction. I mean, this is the grand version of the orcs vandalizing the statue and putting an eye on it. Right? That this is to the extreme of bringing desolation wherever they go. Okay, we're not going to be fooled by that. Anyway, they go along, and we even find out that Sauron obviously knows about Shelob, but he allows her to stay there because she protects that board. Nobody's ever made it past her, right? She is that, the last defense. And so he didn't have to bother putting any soldiers there because she is there. And again, they're not a threat to each other, right? They want a different kind of power and corruption of all that stuff. Anyway, now, okay, what happened? There's one mistake that the movie makes that I wish they hadn't done it. Because if you've seen the movie, right, after they get past Shelob for the first time, Gollum attacks them. And he actually attacks Frodo. Okay? That's one of the few places where the writers just miss the whole point. Okay? Gollum has taken an oath on the precious that he will not hurt them. That's why he can't do it. He can attack Sam. He can attack the fat one because he's got no. But that's why he wants Shelob to do the killing, and then she doesn't care about rings. Once they're dead, he'll get the ring. So they miss the whole point of what Gollum is doing by allowing him to suddenly attack Frodo and try to beat him up. Right? But he can attack Sam. That's no problem. Right? But he can't attack. So this is his way of doing it. Let her do it, and then I'll go get the ring. Right? And anyway, so they attack and stuff like that. You little sneak. And okay. Let's move on to chapter 10, page 728. The Choices of Master Samwise. Isn't it a great title for a chapter? The Choices of Master Samwise. Samwise Gamgee. Well, there is a really good classical Christian school called Providence up in Spring Cypress, and the headmaster, his son's name is Theoden. He actually, he even put the accent in there. It's just so cool. I'm trying to get him to come to HBU. Okay. It's like to have a Theoden over here. That's just cool. He goes by Teddy, but Theoden. Okay, so he comes in here, and on chapter 10 is when Sam takes on the evil Shelob. And of course, he's got that great sword, right? But nobody can pierce the skin, the hide, the claws, whatever, of Shelob. Not even Beren or Turin, it says, could have done that. That's the bottom of page 728. It says, Shelob was not as dragons are. No softer spot had she, save only her eyes. Knobbed and pitted with corruption was her age-old hide, but ever thickened from within with layer on layer of evil growth. No one has the strength to pierce them. The blade scored it with a dreadful gash, but those hideous folds could not be pierced by any strength of men, not though elf or dwarf should forge the steel, or the hand of Beren or of Turin wield it. She yielded to the stroke, and then, okay, now, so do you understand how he's able to, well, he didn't really kill her, but able to wound Shelob? He cannot, he doesn't have the strength, nobody does, to pierce the sword through her. But what happens? You understand? Good. She falls on it to crush him, and it's her own strength that pushes her onto the blade. That's the coolest thing you learn in the whole martial arts, is to use your enemy's strength against them. So if your enemy's actually bigger and heavier than you are, okay, you, just by turning, right? What's it? Yeah, push them off balance, and then there they go. Okay. Another couple weeks, you're going to be the little guy, Bill. He's doing a great job. How much weight have you lost? So you had this 25 in the 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks. They're pretty good. So it can be done. Good stuff. Anyway, and then I hope you didn't get any help from Richard Simmons. That annoying guy, Richard Simmons. I know why I just thought about this. Come on. Come on. And it's like,
my favorite Richard Simmons one's
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, oh my gosh, but he used to hug him. Dad, get away from me, you sweaty thing. I love that, man. That was great. I love it. Anyway, so she actually pricks herself. She falls upon it, right? And she's still getting, at one point, of course, he stabs one of her eyes. They get those complex eyes. And then, how is he able to fend her off? Okay, page 729, the next page. He says, he pulls out the phial of Galadriel, and it says, Galadriel, he said faintly, and then he heard voices far off but clear. The crying of the elves as they walked under the stars in the beloved shadows of the Shire, and the music of the elves as it came through his sleep in the hall of fire in the house of Elrond. Gilthoniel Elbereth. Remember Elbereth or Varda. That's the consort of Manwe. And then his tongue was loosed, and his voice cried in a language which he did not know. If he was in Kentucky, what is he doing now here? Bill? He's in a good church. He's speaking in tongues. Okay, he's literally speaking in tongues, speaking in a language that he does not know. Right? Yeah. What's that? Oh, that's right. That's true. That's right. It's cool stuff, man. I don't know. It's really interesting. And then he speaks, right? The beautiful Elvish. Elbereth Gilthoniel, Omenel Palan Diriel, Lenalon Sidan Guruthos, Atironin Fanwilos. You know who speaks Elvish beautifully is Liv Tyler. She said she still has them all memorized. She loves speaking. There's your woman, huh? Liv Tyler?
Please.
Hey, you know,
Anything you want to say.
that picture of yours by the door, is that blue? The one that's by where you come in, it's a woman? Isn't that yours?
Oh, yeah. The big one.
The one in the front.
Oh, that's another student of mine. Her name's Anne.
Okay, I was just wondering. Okay, yeah, because that's really beautiful. It's a haunting image. Wow, sounds good.
Her
Good
name's
stuff.
Anne. The story behind that portrait is that chick is like, she's super brilliant. She's a research analyst. She works in medical research. She's brilliant. But she dresses like a hardcore biker chick.
Oh my gosh!
She's an artist and she does tattoos.
Oh my gosh!
But she never misses any of my workshops. She's like
Oh, okay.
a loyal attendee.
Oh,
of my
good.
workshops. So she's always working on her art. But she's like super hardcore. Her hair is like super straight all the way down to here. Like hardcore biker chick. Never smiles.
Oh my gosh!
But if you know her, she's the sweetest.
Really interesting character.
So I wanted to make that painting of her with like all that pure black and darkness, but do her in gold because she has.
Okay, because it's a haunting image. He just kind of comes out of it. Okay.
She's a little an enigma.
She's an enigma. There we go. An enigma wrapped in a riddle, wrapped in a, what is it? That's what, what's it? You know? Yeah.
Mysteries or conundrum?
Conundrum,
That
yeah.
was conundrum.
Who said it? That's what who said? It's Winston Churchill talking about the Soviet Union. Yeah, that's what he apparently said that.
Somebody said that about like women.
Oh, maybe women in general, I don't know. But wrapped in an enigma. Anyway. Now, when he stabs her again on page 730, look at this wonderful little phrase. It's easy to miss. Okay. As if his indomitable spirit had set its potency in motion, the glass blazed suddenly like a white torch in his hand. So, again, let it be a light to you in dark places, right? It flamed. And remember, it's also like the lembus, which is even stronger when that's the only thing you eat. Okay? It has a greater potency. Well, here, the lembus bread, if you only eat that, it has a stronger potency. Here, the light, the gleam is coming out. Go see Paula's picture with the cross there, with the gleam coming out. It's like, oh, it's like she's like, I'm gonna outdo Michael Collins, man. Get that glow going because he's the one with the mystery of light. Anyway, he says, it flamed like a star that, leaping from the firmament, sears the dark air with intolerable light. No such terror out of heaven had ever burned in Shelob's face before. The beams of it entered into her wounded head and scored it with unbearable pain. And the dreadful infection of light spread from eye to eye. She fell back, beating the air with her forelegs, her sight blasted by inner lightnings, her mind in agony. Look at that phrase, the dreadful infection of light. Isn't that not brilliant? I mean, that's of course an oxymoron, right? The infection of light, but to this evil creature, light turns out to be poison to her. Just like Lembus and the elven rope are sort of poison to Gollum. Or, as we've said so many times, holy water or the cross or the Eucharist is poison to a vampire. Right? Dreadful infection of light. You got a little of that darkness there, Chris, in one of yours? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, on page 730. And then, and again, I just love it. So many people try to imitate Tolkien, but when they do it, it often sounds, hollow or empty or just simply old-fashioned. But only he could say this. So after the space break, Sheila was gone, and whether she lay long in her lair, nursing her malice and her misery, and in slow years of darkness healed herself from within, rebuilding her clustered eyes, until with hunger like death she spun once more her dreadful snares in the glens of the mountains of shadow, this tale does not tell. Isn't that awesome? This tale.
Scenario to be like, what if she did this and this and this and this? We're not going to talk about
I'm like, no, I think it's great. See? Oh my gosh. Come on. Girls are more notorious than boys at this, but the girls are like, man, you know what happened? She starts, and she's like, no, I can't tell you that. But why did you start? Why did you start? Pull it back. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. I just realized, Amanda, you sometimes remind me of, who was that actress that was in the Chihuahua, the Beverly Hills Chihuahua? Who is that actress? She's a really likable actress. What was her name, though? Piper.
She was also in HBO. And she was also in an HBO movie called Freeway, which is
What's something? She's very likable. What is that actress's name? No, not the Chihuahua. The girl that has the Chihuahua. What's the actress's name? No, not the one. It wasn't Legally Blonde. It was somebody else. No, not the Chihuahua. Piper, yeah. Is it Piper something? Parombo or? Is that it? Something like that. Hey, we can look her up. Man. Just, am I right?
the movie was the Chihuahua. What movie was the Chihuahua?
Beverly Hills Chihuahua.
Beverly Hills Chihuahua. This was cool. Oh, it's really silly, but it's fun. Of course, my daughter loved it. She likes those little dogs. I don't remember Drew Barrymore being in it. I don't know. Maybe she was in the sequel, but the original. Anyway, she was a likable actress. Anyway. Was that it? Okay, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember. I hadn't seen her in too many things, but I remember that. Okay. Anyway, let's keep moving. So, then Sam decides, again, why am I left all alone? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then he's like, this wasn't for me, but I've got to take it up, right? I've got to take it up and finish what Frodo started. And there's a wonderful little touch here when he puts on the ring, right? And now, first of all, I think the movie's a little bit wiser in not having him put on the ring, because how is it that he puts on the ring and Sauron doesn't find him? I mean, he's like in Mordor now. I mean, to me, that's kind of a weakness. But anyway, it's kind of a necessity, because when he puts on the ring, do you understand what he's able to do? He's not only invisible, he can understand the orc tongue. And I think in the movie they just had him speak English and didn't worry about that, like they do in the old Star Trek. Everybody speaks English all over the galaxy, right? But it's important that when he puts the ring on it, it puts him into the ring time, it makes him invisible, it lets him hear speech. But I just want to see this one line here. It's on page 734. All the way at the bottom of the page, there's something the ring can't do. Okay, it says, perhaps the ring gave understanding of tongues, or simply understanding, especially of the servants of Sauron, its maker, so that if he gave heed, he understood and translated the thought to himself. Certainly, the ring had grown greatly in power as it approached the places of its forging. But one thing it did not confer, and that was courage. Why can the ring not give you courage? Courage is a what? It's a virtue, okay? And the ring cannot give any virtue. I'm a big fan of Camelot, have you ever seen Camelot, Marcy? The musical, Camelot? Oh, that's a good one. You see that, Bill? It's based on The Once and Future King, which is a really good book. And there's a great line where Arthur is trying to talk to the evil, illegitimate son, Mordred. And he's trying to talk to him, and he said, Mordred, happiness is a virtue. Therefore, you cannot be wicked and happy. You can be triumphant, but you cannot be happy. Right? So the ring has no power. It's dark magic, has no power to give any virtue, whether it's courage or temperance or wisdom or justice, certainly not faith, hope, and love. So it gives him a little bit of power, but it doesn't give him courage, and ultimately it's not going to give you wisdom either. Right? And then on the next page, 735, he's trying to decide what to do, and then he says, "Oh, you fool! You should never have left your master." But this is just good characterization. Okay, look at page 735, just before the space break on the bottom. Sam is trying to think of what will happen, if the ring is taken by Sauron, everything's destroyed, and he expresses it in a way that is so true to his characters. You know what I mean? Okay, he says, "How many are there?" he thought. 30 or 40 from the tower at least, and a lot more than that from down below, I guess. How many can I kill before they get me? They'll see the flame of the sword as soon as I draw it, and they'll get me sooner or later. I wonder if any song will ever mention it. How Samwise fell in the high pass and made a wall of bodies round his master. No song. Of course not. For the ring will be found, and there'll be no more songs. See how he can understand. That's his understanding of Armageddon, whatever you want to say, the post-apocalyptic dystopia that every other movie seems to be about these days. Right? There will be no more songs. That's the worst. There will be no songs. I can't help it. My place is by Mr. Frodo. They must understand that Elrond and the council and the great lords and ladies with all their wisdom, their plans have gone wrong. I can't be their ring bearer, not without Mr. Frodo. And so he realizes that, okay, what's more important, friendship or an abstract principle? Okay? For a sort of traditional conservative, right, who likes local things, the personal tie is always going to be more important than the abstract principle, right? We said this before, so that Robert E. Lee, even though he sympathized with the North, went with the Confederacy because his state went with the Confederacy. And he felt more kinship with his state than with the federal government, right? And that's why, again, and we've said this before, but a true conservative should be suspicious of big government. But a true conservative should also be suspicious of big business, because big business loses the human element, and they don't care anymore about the human element, right? So it's this idea of small, of going on the smaller level. And you remember what Gandalf said, why he should allow Pippin and Merry to go? I think it best to trust to their friendship. Right? That is what will keep them going. So, again, it's a very Tolkien kind of thing. Oh boy. By the way, their nickname for Gollum is Shelob's Sneak, interestingly enough. I've kind of heard him, he's gone around.
Why would the nickname be longer than the actual name?
And that is true, I guess. That's true. You're right, nickname usually is smaller.
Shorter than the original name?
Maybe they don't, yeah.
Oh.
And Sam's really happy because everybody starts saying, there must be a great elf loose in here killing us all. And Sam's laughing. It's just little old me. Ain't I a stinker? Isn't that what Bugs Bunny used to say? Ain't I a stinker? You have a little bit of Bugs Bunny in you? Anybody ever seen a movie called It Happened One Night? I bet you did. Bugs Bunny was partly based on Clark Gable in that movie. There actually is a scene when he's eating a carrot, but it was partly based on his character, which is a great one in that movie.
Oh, just thought you were going to say Space Jam.
Oh, Space Jam, that was fun. Get that Michael Jordan water. Okay, how are we doing? Now let's go a little farther before we take a break. Okay, hey, we're in book 5, right? And here, Pippin and Gandalf have come to Minas Tirith, and he describes the 7 gates. Is that not a wonderful moment in the movie when they're going round and around all those gates, up, up, up? This is unbelievably beautiful. This one, and remember, it's carved into the end of a mountain range. The mountain range comes to an end, and they've carved that face right out of it. And that's why in the movie, not the book, when Denethor kills himself, he jumps off. Ah! Flaming fireball of death, as my son used to say when he was going down, right? By the way, did anybody notice in the movie that during the Battle of Pelennor Fields, one of the ways that they're helping themselves is that they're ripping the stones off of Minas Tirith and catapulting them at the enemy? And then a few days later, when the wedding's there, everything's back to normal, right? So, did Gandalf do a spell? Okay, bibbidi bobbidi boo? Bibbidi bobbidi boo? They're very fast. They're very fast. Okay, let's see. Shall we jump in? Where can we jump in? Let's see. He comes to Denethor. Let's go a little farther. Let's see. Let's see. Why don't we go to? Let's go to page 753. There's so much we can do. We're skipping ahead. Again, we get all beautiful descriptions all the time. We also see the white tree, but it's dead. Okay? The white tree is dead. But let's pick up here, page 753, and they're on the way to Denethor, right? And it says, towards the top, I'm sorry, actually 2/3 of the way down, of 753, it says, they walked down a paved passage, long and empty, and as they went, Gandalf spoke softly to Pippin. Be careful of your words, Master Peregrine. This is no time for hobbit pertness. Theoden is a kindly old man. Denethor is of another sort, proud and subtle, a man of far greater lineage and power, though he is not called a king. But he will speak most to you, and question you much, since you can tell him of his son Boromir. He loved him greatly, too much perhaps, and the more so because they were unlike. Shall I tell you a tale of a man who loved not wisely, but too well? Did I identify that? Shakespeare. That's Othello. Right? He loved not wisely, but too well. He loved him greatly, too much perhaps, and the more so because they were unlike. But under cover of this love, he will think it easier to learn what he wishes from you, rather than from me. Do not tell him more than you need, and leave quiet the matter of Frodo's errand. I will deal with that in due time. And say nothing about Aragorn either, unless you must. In fact, it would be better if you didn't say anything at all. I can just see Peter Jackson and his wife writing the dialogue, and it just coming out. I mean, you expect that. Like in the movie, he says, "Don't do this, don't do this," and then he says, "In fact, it would be better if you didn't speak at all," which is not there, but it's just like the logical. It's like the old days when you tell a joke. There's not just the punchline; it's what's called the payoff. When you tell like a 4-part joke, and then there's the great payoff at the end, right? Anyway, I just love that. There's moments. It's like I keep expecting them to say it in the book because the movie's so iconic, right? And then they go on. He said, "Well, why shouldn't I tell him about Strider?" You notice that the hobbits almost continue to call him Strider most of the way, right? And as they're going on, Gandalf says to him, he halted at the top of page 754. See here, Master Pippin, there is no time to instruct you now in the history of Gondor, though it might have been better if you had learned something of it when you were still birds nesting and playing truant in the woods of the Shire. Do as I bid. It is scarcely wise, when bringing the news of the death of his heir to a mighty lord, to speak overmuch of the coming of one who will, if he comes, claim the kingship. Is that enough? Kingship? Yes, if you have walked all these days with closed ears and mind asleep. Wake up now! What has Pippin not realized? That Aragorn's the king, okay? They've been walking along with him all this time. It's like, open your eyes. Again, it's almost a funny version of the road to Emmaus or something, right? You're walking along. The Lord's right next to you. Don't you recognize him? Don't you recognize him? Anyway, it's just a wonderful, wonderful line there. Okay, then they come in, and we're going to meet Denethor, right? Again, at first he's like, I have no love for hobbits. Not because of Pippin, but because when's the first time Denethor heard about a hobbit or a halfling? Good, Faramir's in that poem, that little riddling poem, which is what led who to go where? Boromir to go to Rivendell. Good. What's the other name for Rivendell?
What's it start with?
With an I? You got him, Andre. You're winning the Nerd Award today. Very good, Marcy. Okay. It's good. I love it, man. It's good. Imladris. That's part of the poem. In Imladris it dwells, right? Seek the sword that was broken in. Anyway, it's good stuff. It's great. My daughter is unashamed. She's looking for a nerdy boy that knows Lord of the Rings, so she's okay with that. Is your husband a nerdy boy, Marcy? He's getting a PhD, right? In philosophy, I think? That sounds like a pretty nerdy thing.
Oh, he's an arguer.
He's an arguer?
She answered immediately.
Yes. It's good stuff. That's good stuff.
My brother has that, and all he does is argue with me, and he just argues constantly. It's like, well, he'll start talking about Nietzsche and this, and it's just like,
The worst thing, and this is very American, and my brother is like this. Have you ever been discussing, dialoguing with someone, right? And you're giving your argument, and you can tell by looking at them that they're not really listening to you. They've already decided they're going to disagree, and they're using this time to come up with their comeback, right? This is kind of like being in an honors college discussion section. Yeah, that's it. Yes, they're composing their response because they're not really listening to what you're saying. It's like, ah! Terrible.
Also, Nietzsche's the worst, just by the way.
This is the words you give me.
We were in the discussion, and it was going back and forth. And he, he's really intelligent. And we're going back and forth, and I can feel like I'm already starting to lose this because he's out referencing me, right? Because I don't have like books on speed dial in my brain. So he's just like referencing this point, and then he's also Mr. Tattoo Boy. So he holds up his arm and he's like, he reads off the Nietzsche quote on his arm.
Why?
Oh.
I stared into the abyss and in the abyss.
Oh my gosh!
And so there's many translations of that, right? So I stared into the abyss and in the abyss I saw nothing is one translation, right? And then the other translation is I saw myself, right? And I'm like, so which one is that? Which one is that? He's like, well I don't know, but it's like that quote. I'm like, right, but which translation of that quote is it?
Oh my gosh!
He's around my right there.
Yeah, tattooed on my body, I don't know what it says, but I just know it's supposed to be that. I was like, so you know about 3/4 of the sentence then?
I was on a plane once. I was either going to or coming back from England, and the guy next to me had tattooed in his arm, his whole arm, "Nemo me impune lacesse." And I said to him, "You must be from Scotland." And the only reason I knew that is there's an Edgar Allan Poe story, Cask of Amontillado, where his motto is, it means no one dare attack me with impunity. And it's the I knew from the note in my book that it's the motto of Scotland. So anyway, he was impressed, and then he said to me, some of my friends did that while I was asleep. While you were asleep, what were you, knocked out on drugs? Nemo man, his entire arm. That's what he claimed. That's what he claimed. I mean, he must have been drugged out on sleep. Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I said all the way down, like 25 letters, all the way down his arm. That is crazy. I don't know, man. Talking about out cold. Oh boy. Anyway, okay, man. We need to lighten ourselves up here. We're going. We're moving along. Yeah. Anyway, we didn't keep that poor Justin out too late, did we? Okay.
I didn't get back to 11:30, but he lives in Sugarland.
Oh my gosh, he's far away. Man, crazy stuff. Anyway, okay. Anyway, he comes forward, right, and on page 755, and they do this really well in the movie too. He's explaining to him how his son died, and he's like, how could such a great warrior die? Well, even the greatest warrior can be killed by one arrow, and Boromir was killed by many, right? And who else was killed by orc arrows? Remember? In the past. Isildur, right? Isildur, who tried to keep the ring for himself, was also shot by orc arrows, and that's why the ring fell into Anduin and settled down all the way in the bottom there. But anyway, as he's telling it to him, this is the very bottom of 755. He says, "Then Pippin looked the old man in the eye, for pride stirred strangely within him." Not necessarily a bad pride. Still stung by the scorn and suspicion in that cold voice. "Little service, no doubt, will so great a lord of men think to find in a hobbit, a halfling from the northern shire, yet such as it is, I will offer it in payment of my debt." Twitching aside his grey cloak, Pippin drew forth his small sword and laid it at Denethor's feet. The movie does this beautifully, the way Pippin does it. Again, another act of courtesy, an amazing act of courtesy. Right? A pale smile like a gleam of cold sun on a winter's evening passed over the old man's face. But he bent his head and held out his hand, right? And they go on. They explained it for a while. He says, "I see that strange tales are woven about you," said Denethor. "And once again it shows that looks may belie the man or the halfling. I accept your service, for you are not daunted by words, and you have courteous speech, strange though the sound of it may be to us in the south. And we shall have need of all folk of courtesy, be they great or small, in the days to come. Swear to me now." So we got, again, that same sort of courtesy we saw in Faramir, we see it here. I mean, there's a good side to Denethor as well. I mean, the actor did a good job. Denethor is a very strange character, even when you read him here. It's a little bit hard to figure out at times. But he is supposed to be noble and strong, and yet, and I don't know if you picked up on this. I don't think it's in the movie that I remember. But this guy's a really strange dude. Do you know what we found out about him underneath his cloak? I don't know if you picked up on that. He's like been wearing his armor under his cloak, and he's like just left on it. Then he sleeps it and eats it, everything. Like he's trying to suffer along with them. He's a really weird guy. He's a strange fish, okay? And again, I still don't understand. The movie, it doesn't make full sense if we don't know that he's got a palantir. I mean, it works still, but I guess, like I said, they didn't want to duplicate having two palantirs. But it's so important to know that he's been wrestling with the enemy. Right? This is why he knows so much of everything that's going on. It's just odd. Even in the extended version, they never mention it. But anyway, so he will take the pledge, and look on the next page, 756. I'm sorry, farther down, at the middle of 756. Here's the oath. Here do I swear fealty and service to Gondor, and to the Lord and Steward of the realm, to speak and to be silent, to do and to let be, to come and to go, in need or plenty, in peace or war, in living or dying, from this hour henceforth, until my Lord release me, or death take me, or the world end. So say I, Peregrine, son of Paladin, of the Shire of the Halflings. Wonderful. Very noble. And then, and this do I hear, Denethor, son of Ecthelion, Lord of Gondor, Steward of the High King, and I will not forget it, nor fail to reward that which is given, fealty with love, valor with honor, oath-breaking with vengeance. Now, do you know what kind of system uses vows and oaths like this? It's very popular in the Middle Ages. It's called, starts with an F. Actually, I gave a lecture on this too, I think. Do you know? Do you know, Marcy? The system that they used that allowed you to raise an army. It's the same system you see in Robin Hood, but you know? Yeah, you got it, feudalism, okay? And this is, now, the Greeks and Romans did not have feudalism, right? They didn't need feudalism because they had a standing army that they could pay with money, okay? Feudalism comes from the Germanic and Frankish groups and the Scandinavian groups, where they didn't have the kind of money they needed. And so in feudalism, you have a very personal oath between the Lord and his, you know what they called it? It starts with a V. If you know this from movies, it's called the Lord and his vassal, right? The vassal is also a knight. And they call him a knight, I think, in England. But another word for a vassal or knight is a baron. Okay, like Baron of Locksley. It's all the same person. And when they do that, they take a very formal oath of fealty. And what would happen is that you, if you're the vassal, you come and kneel and you put up your hands, and I put my hands around yours, and you take your oath of fealty. And it's actually there in Beowulf too, a version of it, because again, it comes from the Germanic and the Nordic people, and the Vikings brought the feudal system to France. And that's what we call the French kings. But then when the Normans invaded England in 1066, they brought feudalism to England. Okay, and that lasted throughout the Middle Ages. And to a certain extent, France was still feudal until the French Revolution. I mean, they were the last one to sort of modernize, and they did it the hard way. Okay, but there's a lot of element of that feudalism, the gift giving and things like that, right? And it was such an oath, right, that if I am the vassal and you're my lord, and I die, right, and I am survived by a young son or daughter, that son or daughter will become a ward of the lord. Today we say ward of the state, right? And if it's a boy, then they will help him to grow up and make him a knight. If it's a girl, their job is to take care of her until she can marry a knight. Okay? And who is the ward of Prince John? The female ward of Prince John. That's Maid Marian, okay? And Maid Marian, and of course he wants Maid Marian to marry, what's that guy's name, the bad guy, Sir Guy of Gisborne or whatever. But she falls in love with Robin Hood instead, the Baron of Locksley, right? So bringing up all this stuff make you want to go to the Renaissance Festival? Have you all been to the Red Fest?
Of course.
Good stuff. Do you ever think about getting a booth at the Red Fest? Selling stuff.
To, like sell dragons and stuff.
You gotta call it. Everything is sold there, you
You're
know.
talking about the art, like selling art there?
Yeah.
No.
I don't know. You probably,
It's really, you gotta be on the whole circuit.
oh,
You can't make money on
that's what I bet people. That's right. Like
You
the,
do the whole like Renaissance.
that's it. Like they'll go up to Dallas.
Sherwood Forest, and
That's right.
All the other ones, you know, you get to like.
What's the one in Dallas called? Scarborough Fair, near Dallas, up there. That's right. That's Sherwood Forest on the way to
I
Austin.
wanted to attend someone else's Ren Fest.
It's more fun,
I've
yeah.
been to the Texas one. I wanted to go to like Sherwood Forest or something.
It's good stuff. I missed it this year because of COVID, but I'll go next year. Anyway, so was that? It's well, yeah, it's October, November, basically 8 weeks, ending at Thanksgiving. It's 8 weeks leading up, the weekends leading up to Thanksgiving, and the one Black Friday.
What's the best weekend for you to go? What do you like?
A lot of times I would go up on Black Friday with the kids when everybody's out shopping because that's the only Friday it's actually open.
Oh, okay. Mine's Barbarian Horde weekend.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Well, the last weekend was Celtic Christmas. Yeah,
People watching.
good stuff, man.
Yes. I learned that as a teenager.
Is that who you want to be, Conan the Barbarian? Anyway, oh my gosh.
He's already been a gladiator.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, there we go. There's a gladiator. Okay.
I got called out by someone else who's not even in the friend group. And he's the sales rep, and he sent me a picture of Russell Crowe. Because
Cool guy.
he was like asking for my art Facebook page or whatever, and I sent him a link. I guess he saw my profile picture, and he immediately sent back a picture of Russell Crowe. I was like,
Oh.
"Fuck, dude." You don't even know that this is like changes my existence.
It's spreading.
Hey, since we're talking so much, why don't we take a little break? Would you like to show off some of your artwork?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go out there for a few minutes. Let them show off their artwork.
Let's go to Robbie's studio. He's got the most hanging.
Yeah, show them the stuff that's hanging out here. Oh, you're getting ready. They're really good. And actually, Margie, there's going to be another lady from Iran. But I think they were saying that she might have to do it by Zoom. Robert, is that her yet? Yeah. Arsenal, something like that. I got it. It's been a few years. But seriously, you can work on something like that. We want to together something that's real artistry. That will help you to get you ready. Like it might be something that you could use like a little apply to school. Oh, say it again about that. Oh, okay. Oh, that would be perfect because we're reading off it. So that's a lot of the stories people tell me. Well, that would be great.
Yeah, that's why I should talk to Dr. Peralta.
Yeah. I mean, we already talked about it. MLA students can take it.
Because I already took Western culture.
Oh.
So I don't know if I can take it.
I mean, you will have a different, what they call subtitle. So maybe that would allow you to.
I checked them in this.
Or is it not showing?
No, it is.
Okay.
But this was since the Western one, and
Okay.
I already took it. I don't know if I can take
Ask him. He can always write you what do you call it, exception form.
Really?
Yeah, because that would be good. And we could even see, like if you really wanted to do a major thing on that subject, you could sort of break it up into threes. So make it your three. Because if it's something really long you want to do, let's do it in pieces. Like the first thing that could be like a running theme for your food presentations.
Yeah, I
And that
would
would help
like
you.
to work on it somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Get started. And you've already read the Hobbit, so you look for stories in
Yeah, I've
there.
already read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I thought it would be helpful.
Oh,
I
good.
read the course, yeah.
Yeah, we don't. And if I think about it, I'll send you an example of one of the PowerPoints I made up so you can see it.
Yeah,
They got PowerPoints.
If
Yeah.
I mean, if syllabus is
Uh-huh.
ready, so I would like to.
Yeah.
take it.
Yeah. I think, well, I probably have the one that I used last time. I'll just send you that. Because it won't be too different. The only difference is there'll be like 13 MFAs there. So now we do one day we're going to have to have 2 days for each round. Or because I'm going to have 13 people, I'll have a whole group. And Chris will lead the pack.
Yeah,
Lead the pack.
I'm looking forward to it next class. We get to see some of the people that.
Yeah, that are invisible now, right? You never see them.
And I see once in a blue moon.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But yeah, we'll work that out. But that's a good idea. Yeah. And you can even think about it, like you said, over the summer, and start, you know, kind of thinking things through and what you want to do. Because often when you apply to grad school like that, they may ask you for a sample of what
Yeah.
you've done. Yeah. So
I'm
that'd be
going
good.
through it,
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, it's going to be done 3 hours and Leonora Carrington.
Where's that again?
Leonora Carrington.
Where's that?
She's a surrealist.
Okay.
Painter, yeah.
Surreal. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
So I'm going to write something about that.
Okay.
Even upstairs or, yeah.
And has she done? She does painting. What is her medium?
Painting.
Painting, and does she do stuff in mythology, or it's like her own mythology? Or
It is her own.
her own mythology.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that could be, that could be like you could do a report, talking about a certain thing, whatever, half woman, half bird, whatever it is, and maybe show some classical things, and then maybe talk about how she's reinvented the woman bird or whatever she uses,
Yeah.
half and half kind of thing. Well, that'd be cool. I like that. It'd be good. Hey, you would be like, oh, you see, I had 2.5 years ago.
Do you work in the summertime? Do you teach in the summer?
I don't teach in the summer, no, but I'm around.
You teach in the summer.
Yeah. So that's
What
what we're
now?
writing and stuff.
So are you thinking the art route with this?
No, I like to apply for art history for PhD. I want to write something about art as my writing sample. What are you going to do after graduation?
Well, I may get a second master's either in history of philosophy or,
Interesting.
or I may get a second master's here in classical Christianity, like
I
most
want to do
places.
that in classical Christianity. I said, that he are probably on the best program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Mhm.
And so I was thinking about doing that and then getting a PhD in classics or history of philosophy because it's got some a long way.
Why do you want to apply?
I don't know yet. Because right now, I'm kind of already, my job wouldn't change too much. Or, my life, the last 10 years, has just been a series of walking through doors. So I'm not trying to get ahead of God on that. I'm just letting Him do what He's done.
Is it hard? That's exciting too.
Yeah, she finishes up her bachelor's in May, and then she's going to go from there.
And what?
It's just a liberal arts degree.
Oh, great.
She started out as a nursing major and then went to social work. And she was like, I'm not going to do a degree, so I'm just going to do a degree and go from there. His master's and stuff like that.
This is my second master, so I can figure as postgraduate student. Then I took my master in cinema studies.
In what?
Cinema studies.
Cinema studies?
Yeah, school of cinema studies, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like
Where did you do that at?
UH.
I didn't know they had it there. That was neat.
It's a good program.
So are you planning on teaching?
Teaching? I would like to stay in academy, but I'm not ready for that. I should probably work on my, English.
Oh,
Yeah,
Um,
because I have a very
I don't
strong
know if you
accent.
noticed, but this country, the fact that you are from Iran,
Uh-huh.
the fact that you're a woman, you would be able to do a job at college.
Really?
You're a minority, yeah.
Good.
I mean, that's just the way it is, like me, white man.
Wow.
Oh, they're trying to push white men out of the university.
Why?
Because we're part of the problem. Systemic racism and all this other stuff, that's what they're saying. I mean, it's to be like, in our culture right now, it's like at least in the university systems, they're trying really, really hard to push this systemic racism stuff, Black Lives Matter, that kind of thing. And the enemy of that, you have to have, I'm sure you've heard these terms, but, you have the oppressed and the oppressor.
Oh,
The white man is the oppressor.
yes, I know that feminists are becoming the cult. Actually, a feminist course, actually. I know how to in their perspective. I don't necessarily identify with them. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean,
I agree.
I can't, like, even from Eastern Kentucky, which is a very traditionally racist place, it has been for a long time. I mean, we still have an active Ku Klux Klan chapter, like one county below me. But yeah, I was raised. My mom, she was from that county actually. She raised me
What
on
is it called?
Ku Klux Klan.
No, I don't.
Oh, it's Perry County, Kentucky. Actually,
Say it again.
Perry County, Kentucky.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm from Breathitt County, Kentucky. And it was a big, you heard of the feuds in America at all? the Hatfield McCoy feud. Well, there's a whole history of just people fighting and killing each other. The nickname for my county is Bloody Record. So it is like, when we planted our church downtown, there's like maybe just a 0.2 kilometer stretch there that had probably 50 people killed on the streets there. I mean, which is small compared to some countries, I guess, but it was significant here because there were like these families fighting over land, and then when the Civil War happened, they split America in half. So they called that the Mason-Dixon line, and so the South was here, the North was here. The Mason-Dixon line split like that. So like you had cousins fighting each other, brothers fighting each other. To sign up for the Confederate Army, the line was the line, and the Northern Army lines were side by side. It was weird, So there was a lot of fighting after that. And there were very few minorities there. We had maybe 2 Muslim families.
Okay, how it worked if you can speak this way. Sometimes it opens, sometimes it doesn't.
I didn't go to school
Appetite and health restored. You don't know how much I'm old. All right, we're back. Dee-da-da, dee-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, dee-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, dee-da-da-da-da. Okay. I know, we'll cover what I can. Have you been watching The Chosen?
I've not.
Oh.
I know Wednesday and his family were
So good.
I don't know if they're caught up.
Yeah, because it's just, they've put out 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. All right. Right, we'll dive in here. Okay. Oh, there's so much good stuff. Okay. I can't read too much. Let's see. Okay. This is so weird. This Panopto camera like tracks and moves around with me.
Yeah,
and stuff.
when I was watching the video,
Yeah.
Marcus was super weird. Because
Yeah, I'm not doing anything. Yeah.
Move around.
But I'm not actually touching it. It just does that.
Where is the?
It's, well, I guess through there, little one on the top, right?
Like changing focus.
I guess, or something. I don't know what you...
Yeah. Always zoom in. It's like
It's always moving.
the playback is like I'm listening to you, but you're like possessed.
Really?
Yeah, it's like you ever heard that? Like it's a dual voice.
It is a double.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. I don't know what causes that or
It's
why.
like ha ha ha, but it's like echo.
Oh, my God.
My kids one day walked in on me. What is that, man?
The evil laugh. The evil laugh. And I don't know why the camera does that. I'm not touching it. It just...
Yeah,
It literally zooms.
it's a double echo, and then it
Yeah.
moves around. Like it's like a steady cam.
Yeah, I don't know why or what you can do to... I mean, I just basically push play and it does it.
Right. Yes. It's like.
You ever try listening to me at double speed or something? You do that?
Yeah, because when you start really getting into detail,
Yeah?
it's like you're rapping or something.
You're
Like you dropping out.
the Tolkien rap, man. There we go. I love it.
I've been tempted, but I've never hit that magnifier speed. I was tempted.
I'll play around with everything in there.
Somebody needs to do this. Somebody needs to crop a bunch of
And then loop them together.
Oh my gosh. That's it. The Lewis and Tolkien rap. That'd be great. Narnia and Middle Earth rap. You gotta do it. That'd be pretty funny. Oh, man.
Especially when you do voices.
Oh, that's right. I've got to do voices for you sometime. Anyway, okay. Now this again. Look at page 758. They're still talking with Denethor, and he says about halfway down the page, "If you understand it, then be content," returned Denethor. "Pride would be folly that disdained help and counsel at need. But you deal out such gifts according to your own designs. Yet the Lord of Gondor is not to be made the tool of other men's purposes, however worthy." Nobody ever trusts Gandalf. "And to him there is no purpose higher in the world as it now stands than the good of Gondor, and the rule of Gondor, my lord, is mine, and no other man's, unless the king should come again. Now, notice he says that like, I don't know, I guess maybe like a, what's the word I want? Like a, what's the word I want? A cultural Christian would say the litany in church without believing it. Like you say it. Here's the best example. Those of you that have said the Lord's Prayer, how many times have we said, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, right? Did you ever think about what you're saying? You're telling God to treat you how? How you treat other people. This guy's like, did I just say that, right? But what I'm saying is, he's saying it just like it's a litany or something in church, but he doesn't seem to understand what it means. He says, it's like world without end. So he says, unless the king should come. Unless the king should come again, said Gandalf. Well, my lord steward, it is your task to keep some kingdom still against that event. If you're going to turn over the kingdom, you better not destroy it, which few now look to see. In that task you shall have all the aid that you are pleased to ask for. But I will say this, the rule of no realm is mine, neither of Gondor nor any other great or small, but all worthy things that are in peril as the world now stands, those are my care. And for my part, I shall not wholly fail of my task, though Gondor should perish, if anything passes through this night that can still grow fair or bear fruit and flower again in days to come. For I also am a steward. Did you not? Now that line's not in the movie, but it's an important line. He too is a steward. Gandalf was not supposed to control. Saruman was also supposed to be a steward, but he started enjoying controlling and pushing people around and things. So we need to. Okay, then they leave, and then on page 759, there's a wonderful moment when they're on the tower there, and suddenly Gandalf laughs. And I love the way this is described. Are you angry with me, Gandalf? I did the best I could. You did indeed, said Gandalf, laughing suddenly. And he came and stood beside Pippin, putting his arm about the hobbit's shoulders and gazing out of the window. Pippin glanced in some wonder at the face now close beside his own, for the sound of that laugh had been gay and merry. Yet in the wizard's face he saw at first only lines of care and sorrow, though as he looked more intently, he perceived that under all there was a great joy, a fountain of mirth enough to set a kingdom laughing, were it to gush forth. Isn't it great? Beneath that stern Gandalf is a power of mirth. Anybody here try to read Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton? Really good book. Have you tried it?
I've read Heretics.
Oh, you're here. Okay. But he ends Orthodoxy by saying, I believe there was one part of Jesus that he hid from us because we couldn't handle it. It would be too much for us. And the last line is, I believe it was his mirth. Because there's a verse in the Bible that says Jesus wept, but there's no verse that actually says Jesus laughed. I'm sure he did. But there's no verse that says that. But he's like, maybe his mirth was so strong and mighty, we couldn't handle it. So he had to hide that, which is wonderful. And who knows if Tolkien didn't have that in mind. But again, the power of that laughter that will shatter and knock down all that is weak or something like that. Just great. And again, we see him laugh in the movie. He does a good job. Let's see. There's so much to do. Basically, Gandalf says, you did well in offering your service. He says, it was well done. I would not hinder a generous deed. Should not be checked by cold counsel, for it touched his heart. A little farther in 759, right? So now you're free to move around, but be careful. He's also now your master, and you need to listen to him. By the way, I wonder if you've noticed this yet. This is something brilliant that Tolkien does. He really gets this wonderful sense of parallelism, right? Because at the same time that Pippin basically gives himself over to Denethor in service, what is happening? Probably almost at the same time. What does Mary do? Good hand. You see how this is wonderful parallelism here, right? And I don't know how far you've gotten, but at about the same time, Denethor says, I free you from your oath, right? Because he's going to go die. And Mary said, please, Santa said, I free you from your oath because you're not coming with us to Pelennor Fields, right? And it's so much more fun in the book because in the movie, they didn't even try to hide the fact that that guy is really Eowyn dressed up, right? They don't. But in the book, especially the first time, you have no idea it's Eowyn. I mean, you might guess it, but it really is a surprise. But the movie probably made a good choice. Otherwise, it would be too ridiculous. They just, all right, you know it's her. Whatever. But what's powerful about this is, what do Denethor and Theoden have in common? What have they both just lost? Yeah, they both have just lost their eldest son or son. Over here was Theodred. And Warren, this has just happened, you know? Within a week of each other, they both lose their son, right? They both have been giving in to despair. Now, of course, what's powerful about this duality is that Denethor comes out of it, and Theoden comes out of it and has a noble death, whereas Denethor is destroyed. Right? It's a suicide, basically. But it's wonderful to have this back and forth between the two, and it gives a lot of structure because at this point the fellowship is all broken up in all different areas and whatnot, and this keeps it together. And what's funny is that Merry and Pippin are both, in a sense, vassals for Denethor and Theoden, but they're also, in a nice way, court jester. I mean, they're like there to cheer them up and sing songs for them and whatnot. But that becomes it's not frivolous because both of them have given up and have given into despair. So anyway, this is a wonderful way that's lined up. Again, I think it just gives more shape to the second or the third part of the epic, which is kind of neat. Anyway, but hey, you need to follow him and you need to do it, right? Then, I say we can skip a bit. Let's see. I'm going to just kind of have to keep going. What about page 766, all the way at the bottom, just to fill out a little bit more about Faramir. There's two characters, by the way, that are not in the movie. They probably wisely. I mean, you can't have 1,000 people. But Pippin meets a guy named Baragon, who's a ward there, and he's very important because that's the guy that fights off the other Gondorians to stop Denethor from killing Faramir. Right? So he becomes very important, Baragon, and he's got a little boy named Burgle, right? And Burgle and Pippin become good friends. Did you enjoy that part? That would have been cute in the movie, but you can't have everything in the movie. Even when the movie's 12 hours, you can't have everything, right? So it's a huge novel. But it just adds a nice little touch between the two of them. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, I'm just going to show you this just because some of you are probably somewhat interested in screenplay writing. Let me just show you good screenplay writing. Look at page 765. There's two things on page 765 that are said by Baragon, but let's see if you remember what the movie does with them, because Baragon is not in there. So this is towards the top of 765. He says, "Only because everything is now ready," said Baragon, "it is but the deep breath before the plunge." Remember who says that in the movie? It's Gandalf, right? It's such a memorable, the deep breath before the plunge. He said, and at the very bottom of the page, very bottom, he says, "Here will the hammer stroke fall hardest." And that's actually also Gandalf, right? So those two lines, it's like they did a really good job. And earlier, he does say the thing about the chess pieces are set, the move is beginning, whatever the game is beginning. But it's just wonderful how the screenwriters just found these little sayings that are so memorable and move them around so that Gandalf says the two of them. And there's a lot of examples of it in what they do there. So, okay, but we're going to move on. I'm sorry. What I wanted to tell you was on the bottom of page 765. Baragon says, last paragraph, there you lay your finger on the sore that many feel, but things may change when Faramir returns. And we're learning a little bit more about him. And this is the guy that's going to save Faramir's life at the risk of his own. He, Faramir, is bold, more bold than many deem, than many think. For in these days, men are slow to believe that a captain can be wise and learned in the scrolls of lore and song, as he is, and yet a man of hardihood and swift judgment in the field. They've forgotten that you can still be very whatever, manly and heroic and courageous and still love the old things and be a scholar, basically. You know, we often talk about a scholar athlete. This is a scholar soldier, right? Or scholar general. And you can be both, right? You can be both of these. But such is Faramir, less reckless and eager than Boromir, but not less resolute. Faramir has the same basic kind of strength and endurance, but he's less impulsive than his brother Boromir. And so these are just well done things. And remember, the movie does, only in an extended version, they actually add a scene that's not in the novel at all, that's mentioned, that earlier, like whatever, 20 years or so, 10 years before this, briefly Boromir had liberated Osgiliath and taken it back. And only in the extended version, we get to meet the father and the two sons, and they sort of, and again, it's not directly from the novel, but it fits, and it opens up their characters a little bit. But again, you have to watch the. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, so much to do. Let's move to the passing of the Grey Company. Oh, this is good stuff. Now, in the novel, I guess it's on page 775. Arwen sends a message to Aragorn and sends a banner that he's going to unfurl later, right? But in the movie, she sends something else. You know what it is? They do a little interesting difference. It kind of works. It's not until this point in the movie that Aragorn has sent something that's just been fixed. Yeah, the sword. In other words, in the novel, when he leaves Rivendell, he's got Andúril, the reforged blade. But in the movie, just to add some tension, he doesn't actually have that blade. Until then, we see them reforged. It's very Wagnerian. And then they send it to him. But here, it's important that something. And did anybody notice who else comes? In addition to getting the banners, a bunch of Northern Rangers come down to join them. And there's two special people with them. Did you notice who they are? Good, they're the brothers of who? Arwen. So they're actually two elves. Arwen has two brothers. And they took it out of the movie, but they don't really do anything in the book. I mean, they're like there, but they don't really do anything. I mean, just like there's a cool character at the Battle of Pelennor named Imra here, which almost sounds like an Arabic name. He would probably be played by, what was that great actor? Omar Sharif would have played him, if they added him. It's a really cool character, but he does a little bit, but not much. So they trim it. It's just important to know that, and it's really funny because there's no scene in there where their names are El Rahar and something like that. None of them say, "You better take care of her sister." I'm waiting for that. But I mean, these are his future brother-in-laws here. It also makes you feel a little bit better for poor Elrond, because at least he's got two kids that stay elves. Right? In the movie, that's his only child that he loses. And in some ways, I think that makes it work better. But anyway, in case you were wondering, those are the two sons of Elrond, and they remain elves. Anyway, they are going to go on it. And by the way, just so if you want to underline, on page 777, this is where Merry, seemingly at almost the exact same time, pledges his fealty to Theoden. And it's page 777 towards the bottom. "I have a sword," said Merry, right? Filled suddenly with love for this old man, he knelt on one knee and took his hand and kissed it. "May I lay the sword of Meriadoc of the Shire on your lap, Theoden King? Receive my service, if you will. Gladly will I take it. Rise now, Meriadoc, Esquire." Like an esquire, that the way it used to work in the old days is that you became a what's the word? You became a squire before you became a knight. Okay, and still, have you ever heard like British people that have ESQ at the end of their name? Esquire. That's like all the way back to the old feudal days, right? That's esquire or squire. So you kind of move your way up the rank to become a knight, and on the way you become a squire. Right? So I think Arthur is a squire for his brother Kay at one point before he gets the sword in the stone. Right? Anyway, the rise now, again, Esquire of Rohan, take your sword and bear it unto good fortune. As a father you shall be to me, said Mary, for a little while. Nothing lasts in this book, even though it's long, right? But again, they're both taking their oaths at the same time. Okay. Then, okay, again, I think we've kind of explained it, but once again, the story is that way back at the end of the Second Age, when they defeated Sauron, there was the great battle of Dagorlad. And that's the battle that created the Dead Marshes, a lot of the dead. Well, there was a race of men from the south who had pledged fealty to Isildur. But then they were corrupted by Sauron, and they went over to his lies, and they didn't actually take Sauron, but they refused to go to Dagorlad. And so Isildur put a curse on them that they would, in a sense, not rest until their oaths were fulfilled. And the only one that can really fulfill can give them peace is the heir of Isildur. By the way, after the dead army disappears in this book, you know where they went? They went to Pirates of the Caribbean world. Yeah. They look just like them. Anyway. All right, so what's that? That's my theory, at least, and I'm sticking to it. Right? So we see that Aragorn is in great pain. He knows he must take the paths of the dead. If you remember, when the White Rider, when Aragorn reappears to Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn, he brings with him a message from the lady Galadriel. Remember? And the message for Aragorn is, again, be ready to take the road of the dead, right? And then the message to Legolas is, beware, Legolas. Basically, when you hear the gulls of the sea, it will bring your desire. And see, what happens is they go through those mountains. They're called the White Mountains. Those are the mountains that go across. So you've got the Misty Mountains that go down, and you've got the White Mountains that go right in between is the Gap of Rohan, and the Misty Mountains end with the White City. I'm sorry, the White Mountains end with the whatever, Ered Nimrace, I think. And you have to go through the mountains, is you're going to the paths of the dead. Then the other side, they come out, and then they go super fast on their horses all the way down and along the sea, which is down there, because they need to stop the Corsair pirates, the Umbars, they're pirates. And the dead army bring with it this numinous fear that causes them to run in terror, and that's how Aragorn is able to win the boats. And notice he does something messianic. Those pirate ships have slaves working them, like Ben-Hur, and he releases the captives, and they end up fighting for him. So that's one of the things the Messiah does. Remember, what is it? The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to proclaim release to the captives, sight to the blind, the just day of the Lord, whatever. So it's sort of messianic. And once they get the ships, that's when he releases them. They don't actually go to the Battle of Pelennor Fields like they do in the movie. They're released. But again, when he goes through the paths of the dead, what he's really facing is death. Not that ghosts can kill you, but he's facing the dread and fear of death. That's why there's only one person who's not afraid when he goes through. Who's that? Legolas, right? Because he's an elf. He doesn't die. But Gimli, one of my favorite lines. Oh, what is this? What is this? Oh, man! Good stuff. That's probably how you won over your husband, man. That's great to know these lines.
I have to restrain myself. Nobody knows what I'm saying. I just start quoting movies.
Oh, it's good stuff.
Very confused.
Last time we did a marathon, my daughter's there getting every single line, and one of the guys was just like in awe. My little daughter, she's like every line, she gets knocked it off. I told you my daughter's favorite line. Well, boys, look like meat's back on the menu, boys. Licking her lips. It's like, oh man. What's that? Oh, there we go. You say potato and I say potato. Anyway, let's call the whole thing off, man. Okay, when they go down, right? They're obviously going to the sea because that's where they get ships, and we find this out later. When they go to the sea, Legolas hears the gulls, the seagulls, and ever from then on, there's a yearning that sooner or later he will have to abandon the woods and take the ship back. And it's a wonderful idea that, does this happen to Texans when they go to Colorado? Do we get a breath of mountain air and we're never quite secure in Houston again? Well, I guess, not in Houston. Yeah. Well, that's true. You can go up to the hill country is nice. Or all the way down to, I took my kids to the Big Bend National Park. That's the only national park in Texas, because being Texans, everything we have is a state park. But that's a national park. And the least visited national park in the country, because it's literally in the middle of nowhere. And that, of course, is also Palo Duro Canyon over there. That's up north in the Panhandle, close to the Panhandle. Anyway. Okay. Does Wesley like that when you crack your knuckles, or does it freak him out?
Oh, sorry, I can stop.
Okay. My daughter does that too, which is funny. Freaks out my son. Anybody else crack their knuckles? You do that too, Marty. Oh, there you go. When you're getting ready to paint.
My knees will pop indefinitely.
Oh my gosh. It's wild.
I can pop my knuckles once, but my knees will pop indefinitely.
It's wild. Oh man. I think everybody's exhausted today. Okay, let's see. Let's get a little bit more. The poem is on page 764. I'm sorry, I need 781. On page 781, I've got my old edition. On page 781, we've got the and let's see if you recognize the style of the poetry. Over the land there lies a long shadow, westward reaching, wings of darkness. The tower trembles to the tombs of kings. Notice it's the same Beowulf alliterative verse. And because we're still basically Rohan. Anything having to do with Rohan has that kind of poetry, because they are the Anglo-Saxons. The dead awaken, for the hour has come for the oath breakers. Right? Again, that civilization is based on oaths. At the stone of Erech they shall stand again, and hear there a horn in the hills ringing. Right? So, and it turns out that once they go through the mountain and come on the other side, there is a standing stone that fell from heaven. Okay? And that's where they take their oath. Okay? Interestingly, what's the holiest place in Islam? The Kaaba, right? The Kaaba is probably a meteorite. Probably a meteorite that fell out of the sky. And it's interesting because a lot of like the ancient Greeks and Romans, the ancient pagans, they would often, wherever it came from, they would always show like a little statue of Athena that they saw fell from the sky. And you need to understand that even though they built that giant Athena in the Parthenon that was amazing, that was not the important thing. The important thing was the tiny little wooden statue that was, believed to have fallen from the sky. You deal with images like that, totems and stuff, don't you, too, in your art? But it's just interesting that the Kaaba is probably a meteorite, maybe. So, which means it's from outer space, so to speak, that fell. And again, when you go to Mecca for the Hajj, have you been there? Walked around? How many people were there? Thousands. Yeah. Somebody told me that they have a temple there that can seat, I don't know, like hundreds of thousands of people or something. It's unbelievable. It's like the biggest, maybe the biggest. Yeah. Yeah, it's just really odd. Okay. And but again, that's what he describes it. It's like it's fallen from the sky. It's just really interesting. It's dark. It's numinous. It's got a fear to it. And by the way, if you also read carefully the Old Testament, a lot of times when God does something like when they cross into Jordan by the river, he will tell Joshua to put up standing stones to memorialize it. Right. So again, this is a very ancient kind of thing. At the stone of Erech they shall stand again, and hear there a horn in the hills ringing. Who shall the horn be? Who shall call them from the grey twilight? The forgotten people. The heir of him to whom the oath they swore. From the north shall he come, need shall drive him. He shall pass the door to the paths of the dead. By the way, only Marzi here was here from the beginning when we did the Aeneid. Well, you took the Aeneid with me too. If you remember, there's a line about Aeneas having to go get help. And it says, need will drive him. It's very interesting. Whether or not Tolkien had that in mind, it's almost exactly a quote from Virgil's Aeneid, which, of course, Tolkien would have read in Latin. Anyway, oh my gosh. You know what? Let's end quickly over here with one of the most beautiful... Oh, by the way, the place where he crosses to get to the paths of the dead is called dun harrow. Take the word dun and you get harrow. Harrow, harrowing. Anybody remember? Somebody that knows Dante? What was Jesus doing between crucifixion and resurrection? Remember? The harrowing of hell, you remember? He's got to have that in mind when he says dun harrow, because literally this is sort of a harrowing of hell. He's going into the pit, into death, into the abyss to take them out. And he's taking the captive. He's going to set those captives free too, right? Once they restore their oath and show it. So really, again, all of it is very messianic. He's very much the messianic king who will set the captives free, who will die and rise again. I'm going to end here. It's kind of sad because Ellie's not here. She likes Eowyn so much. But this beautiful final parting between... I do. Oh, that's right, because my book dropped. That's why I got lost here. When he says farewell to Eowyn, it's... Oh, sorry. Here it is, page 783. And it immediately, when they start talking, the language becomes very elevated and old-fashioned, if you notice that. So he says, and she answered as one that likes not what is said. All of a sudden it becomes that kind of interesting phrase. Then, Lord, you are astray. For this is Eowyn says that. For out of Herodel no road runs east or south, and you had best return as you came. Nay, lady, said he, I am not astray. This may be the first time in the book that he's not astray, right? Of course, what did we learn from the poem about Aragorn? All that is gold does not glitter, and all those who wander are lost. Finally, for the first time, he can say, I'm not astray. He's about to do something he doesn't want to do, and this is kind of a Gethsemane period from him as well. He all night, you see, he was very grim looking, it says. He knows what's coming, but he knows he must do it. For I walked in this land ere you were born to grace it. There is a road out of this valley, and that road I shall take. Tomorrow I shall ride by the paths of the dead. Then she stared at him as one that is stricken, and her face blanched. And for long she spoke no more, while all sat silent. But Aragorn, is it then your errand to seek death? For that is all that you will find on that road. They do not suffer the living to pass. They may suffer me to pass, but at the least I will adventure it. No other road will serve. He knows what he must do. This is Gethsemane. But this is madness, for here are men of renown and prowess whom you should not take into the shadows, but should lead to war where men are needed. I beg you to remain and ride with my brother, Eomer, for then all our hearts will be gladdened and our hope be the brighter. It is not madness, lady, for I go on a path appointed, but those who follow me do so of their own free will. Right? Then the next page, top of the page, Aragorn, why will you go on this deadly road? Because I must. Only so can I see any hope of doing my part in the war against Sauron. I do not choose paths of peril, Eowyn. Were I to go where my heart dwells far in the north, I would now be wandering in the fair valley of Rivendell. For a while she was silent. Why? Because he's talking about the other girl. He's talking about Arwen. Poor Eowyn, okay? He's talking about Arwen over there, right? I'm sorry, I'm in love with the daughter of a rock star. I don't know why, but anyway, he says, as if pondering what this might mean, then suddenly, you are a stern lord and resolute. Lord, if you must go, then let me ride in your following, for I am weary of skulking in the hills and wish to face peril and battle. Your duty is with your people. Too often have I heard of duty, but I am not of the house of Eorl. Am I not? A shield maiden and not a dry nurse? I have waited on faltering feet long enough. Since they falter no longer, it seems, may I not now spend my life as I will? Few may do that with honor. Again, back and forth, right? And you need to understand that in this book, as great as Eomer, Eowyn, and Theoden are, they're still seen as a little bit lesser than Aragorn and Gandalf and Faramir, because although all of them are equally brave, still, Eowyn too, have a tendency of thinking of their honor before anything else. Now again, they're still very honorable, and Boromir would be more like that, right? But Faramir, again, remember, Faramir is the one who says, I like not the blade for its sharpness or the arrow for its swiftness, right? It's not an end in itself. And so he's telling her, no, you have a duty. She says, shall I always be chosen Shall I always be left behind when the riders depart to mind the house while they win renown and find food and beds when they return? A time may come soon when none will return. Then there will be no need of valor without renown, for none shall remember the deeds. Oh, all your words are but to say, you are a woman and your part is in the house. But when the men have died in battle and honor, you have leave to be burned in the house, for the men will need it no more. But I am the house of Errol, and not a serving woman. I can ride and wield blade, and I do not fear either pain or death. What do you fear, lady? A cage. Luckily, that line is kept in the movie. A cage, that's what she fears. To stay behind bars until use and old age accept them, and all chance of doing great deeds is gone beyond recall or desire. That's what she desires, right? And then, we've got three ladies here. I wonder if any of you have done this. I love this moment. Okay, it says, and yet you counsel me not to adventure on the road that I had chosen because it is perilous. So may one counsel another. Yet I do not bid you flee from peril, but to ride to battle where your sword may win renown and victory. I would not see a thing that is high and excellent cast away needlessly, nor would I. Therefore I say to you, lady, stay, for you have no errand in the south. Neither have those others who go with thee. They go only because they would not be parted from thee, because they love thee. Oh, did I say that? Okay. Did you ever do that? Did you girls ever do that? Did I just say that? I just love it. She lets the cat out of the bag because they love thee, which she's basically saying, I love you, okay? But it's just funny. Sometimes that'll happen. Oh, did I just say that? Anyway, it's kind of funny. Oh, there we go. You've seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding? The man is the head, but the woman is the neck. You never seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Remember that? It's not. It's still funny. It's not as good. But it's. Somebody told me they're thinking of a third one. I don't know if we really need a third one. But again, in the end, he must go, right? But again, we see the difference between Rohan and Gondor, right? Because Gondor are the highest ones, and Rohan are the middle. They are honorable, but maybe they. Well, let's end with this. Let's see if Amanda gets it. Sometimes I think you focus too much on your honor, little one. Recognize that from Narnia? But Aslan says to somebody else, sometimes I think you worry too much about your honor. Somebody loses something in battle. Remember?
Reaper Chief.
Yeah, when Reaper Chief loses his tail. That's a hard one. Mary says,
I was ready.
Ready.
Doctor.
Good job, folks. Anyway, we will continue. So just read on.